The latest innovation with regards to loot in Destiny 2 has been the tier system, where both armor and weapons drop in increasing tiers from 1 to 5 that gradually gain more benefits as the tier increases, with tier 5 weapons offering 3 perks per column for the main traits, total enhancement of every slot, and some unique cosmetic attributes. And alongside the release of this system, all of our old weapons, for better or for worse, have become soft sunset or just left behind in a way because none of them were updated to the new tiering system. Only new gear from the Edge of Fate onwards is included as part of it, which has admittedly left many old weapons to become powercrept and replaced with far better versions. For example, Returned Memory is a much better aberrant action, Yeartide Apex overshadows most energy primaries, and well, we all know how good Mint Retrograde is. However, this isn't to say that every old weapon has been replaced with an equal or better new gear counterpart, because there are still a lot of good old weapons. And today I wanted to compile a list of the top 10 weapons that are not tiered, which are still very, very good and have not yet been replaced by anything better. Also, all of the weapons included in today's video are currently earnable, and a good chunk of them are craftable as well, so no need to worry about RNG. Plus, I also include a brief segment on how to go about earning them, more so for any new or returning players who happen to be watching. And if you enjoy today's content, then a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated. But without further ado, in no particular order, let's begin with weapon number 1. First on the list is the classic kinetic lightweight SMG, the Multimac CCX, specifically with the role of attrition orbs and kinetic tremors. This exact role can be bought from Banshee 44 in the tower completely for free, as it's part of a reparation package from the Waitgate fiasco from last year, because this particular role was one of the affected combos. But if you're not sure what that means, don't worry about it, just know that this weapon is an absolute workhorse and is one of the few primaries that gets this unique perk combo. The weapon is very effective for dealing with and staggering grouped enemies due to the kinetic tremors shockwaves, and at the same time you also create a ton of orbs for both yourself and your team, which synergizes really nicely with the 2-piece smoke jumper set bonus, for example. Admittedly, in a world where Mint Retrograde is still the only rocket pulse, it's going to be hard to put it down for something like Multimac, but still, if we ever get an energy slot rocket pulse, then Multimac would make a great pairing. Next up is yet another powerhouse primary and arguably the best kinetic slot hand cannon, the Strand Heavy Burst hand cannon Unloved, with my preferred role being Hatchling Frenzy. This weapon is earnable from the Sundered Doctrine dungeon, and as a result also comes with the unique Subjugation origin trait. And to put it simply, here's how that works. Against red and orange bar enemies, your shots will explode, sort of like a pseudo explosive payload, and against mini bosses and bosses, you instead exhaust the target for around 5 seconds. And as a reminder, exhaust is a debuff that reduces enemy outgoing damage by 25% that can be refreshed. Furthermore, heavy burst hand cannons are also the best with regards to hand cannon DPS. Nothing beats them out, and as such, they feel really solid to use, especially in the case of Unloved, where every shot is explosive. And perks-wise, Hatchling is a great one to have, especially this season due to the Threadling Proliferation artifact perk, which allows strand damage from any source to spawn Threadlings, and Frenzy just makes the gun feel amazing to use. Highly recommend if you haven't tried it yet. Unloved also has a default 60 ammo generation stat, which is also pretty solid. Next up is a powerful duo of sniper rifles, the Supremacy and Praedyth's Revenge, both of which are kinetic snipers that get some unique roles worth pointing out. And as for acquisition sources, the Supremacy can be earned from the Last Wish raid, and Praedyth's Revenge from the Vault of Glass raid, both of which are craftable, by the way. The reason I want to highlight both at the same time is because they're similar but kinda different. For the Supremacy, my role features rewind rounds and kinetic tremors. It's a great feeling role that lets you rip through a bunch of ammo before even having to reload, though Praedyth's Revenge is definitely the star of the show. It comes with the very strong ammo and damage perk combo of 4th times a charm and bait and switch, plus because it comes from VOG, it gets the Time Lost magazine origin trait, which makes it so casting your super reloads the weapon and doubles the magazine size for as long as the buff is active. And when paired with 4th times a charm, this allows you to fire 26 consecutive bullets, which is seriously awesome and an excellent use of your special ammo. The only new gear sniper that competes with Praedyth is the Lance Ephemeral from the Desert Perpetual raid, which is the same rapid fire frame, though Lance is strand energy and doesn't feature Time Lost magazine. However, it does get the same role of 4th times a charm bait and switch or elemental honing, and will end up edging out Praedyth with regards to total damage purely because of the new gear damage bonus from the artifact. Still though, Time Lost magazine is an insanely useful origin trait that cannot be surpassed, making Praedyth an excellent non-tiered option. Next we have a personal favorite of mine, and that is the Void rapid fire auto rifle, the Reckless Oracle, earnable from the Garden of Salvation raid, which again has the benefit of being craftable. My role features destabilizing rounds and one for all, and to be quite honest with you, I just really love this weapon. It's the best frame of auto rifle that also comes with some of the best damage and ad clear perks in the game, not to mention an incredibly underrated origin trait, photo inhibition. This trait makes it so the weapon deals increased damage to enemy shields, exact percentages can be seen on screen now, but also breaking a combatant's shield will briefly disorient them, making them unable to shoot or use their abilities against you. Furthermore, breaking a matching elemental shield, which in this case would be Void, creates a disorienting blast with a pretty decent AoE. I use this weapon a ton for both the normal and epic Desert Perpetual raid races since it's great for stopping Minotaurs right in their tracks, but also just as an ad clear machine. Destabilizing rounds, despite receiving a small nerf, are still excellent because they continue to give you volatile rounds for 5 seconds, and One for All is so easy to trigger and keep almost 100% uptime on. A very solid weapon that I won't see being beaten for quite some time, though it does involve running GOS to obtain. Not everything is easy. For our next entry, we have again a small collection of weapons that all serve the same purposes, with the best one being the Void Rocket Sidearm Lotus Eater, specifically with the Withering Gaze perk. The reason I wanted to highlight this is because debuff extension with Withering Gaze is becoming more and more popular and meta, largely in part due to its role in the Desert Perpetual raid races, and having a special weapon with Withering Gaze is always good to have in your back pocket. Currently, the only new gear special Withering Gaze weapon is the Heavy Burst Shotgun Pure Recollection, though its downside is obviously its range because it's a shotgun, so having something that's longer range, like Lotus Eater, is the better play, at least for now. The only problem with Lotus Eater is that you cannot target farm it right now, due to GM Nightfalls no longer being a thing, lol. So as for your other options, you have the VS Dravitic Arrest Fusion Rifle from Vesper's Host, or the World Drop Sniper Veleda F, so definitely keep an eye out for these if you get them to drop. Next we have the GOAT Void Area Denial Frame Grenade Launcher, the VS Velocity Baton from the Vesper's Host dungeon, specifically with the role of Demolitionist and Attrition Orbs. Despite Attrition Orbs being heavily nerfed on this particular weapon archetype, the Velocity Baton is still the only energy slot area denial to roll with demo, and you could just as easily swap Attrition Orbs for destabilizing rounds as well. Area denials are also excellent for quickly building their respective elements' transcendence energy, and the Velocity Baton is also the only one that's currently farmable, because in order to get your hands on Psychopomp from Episode Heresy, you'll need to wait for Xur or Banshee to sell it. Plus, at time of writing, a new gear energy slot area denial does not currently exist. Up next is the Arc Adaptive Frame Machine Gun, the Song of Ir-Yût, which may come as a bit of a surprise, but this weapon is secretly one of, if not the best machine gun in the entire game, though it does have the unfortunate side effect of being obtainable only from the Crota's End raid. However, it is also craftable. The roll I have on mine is Demo Sword Logic, which by modern LMG standards is at least okay. It would be more ideal if it had access to better damage perks like Killing Tally or Desperate Measures. However, the real meat and potatoes of this weapon is a two-part story. For part 1, it comes with the Curse Thrall origin trait, which if you're unaware is one of the best origin traits in the game. For simply scoring a melee kill, every kill with the weapon will now cause a Curse Thrall explosion for the duration of the perk, which is 7.5 seconds by the way, making it excellent for AoE ad clear. Then for part 2, because the weapon is Arc, it has a unique interaction with Arc and Prismatic subclasses. You might not be aware of this, but if you're using either a pure Arc subclass or a Prismatic subclass that has an Arc ability or aspect equipped, scoring 4 rapid kills with an Arc weapon will make you amplified, which is one of the strongest elemental effects you can have because it provides a flat 15% DR, makes enemies less accurate when targeting you, and grants access to Speed Booster. And having your ad clear LMG be able to constantly refresh this incredibly easily without the need for ability kills is a very nice bonus. Coming up next is the best rocket launcher in the game by a country mile, Hezen Vengeance. And yes, despite Haliatus being super strong right now, you just cannot beat the Time Lost Magazine origin trait. And yeah, this weapon also comes from the Vault of Glass raid and is indeed craftable. This rocket is loaded with essentially all of the best rocket perks in the game except probably Surrounded, but even then that's incredibly niche. You've got autoloading, demo, Envious Arsenal, and Cluster Bomb in the left column. Then in the right column, there's Bait and Switch, Elemental Honing, or even Bipod. All of these perks are insane to have on the same weapon, which by the way can get triple perks per column if you get the Time Lost version. And like we mentioned earlier, simply because it has access to Time Lost Magazine, the sheer rate at which you can dump your whole reserves is extraordinary. There's a reason this weapon is used for challenges like Solo Witness, and my team even used it to clear Korgos during day 1 of the original Desert Perpetual. New gear bonus be damned, you simply don't need it. As far as the god roll is concerned, there are several that are good for certain situations and classes, so I would recommend getting a Time Lost version from Master Vault of Glass if you can to encompass multiple different roles, but the most consistent one in my opinion is Envious Arsenal and Bait bait and switch, all reliable, if you will. This next weapon was the first of its kind, and despite newer versions releasing since it came out, nothing has really been able to beat it. And I am of course talking about the No Hesitation Solar Support Frame Auto Rifle, which can be easily earned from playing activities and ranking up in the Pale Heart. And yes, it is also craftable. Currently we have two other support frame autos, the Strand Adamantite from Heresy and the newly released Void Cusp Sempiternal from Epic Desert Perpetual. However, neither of these have the overpowered perk that is Physic. Physic states that rapidly healing allies grants you and your allies restoration for an improved duration, and in-game this translates to 5 seconds of restoration ×1 granted after landing several projectiles on an ally. And despite newer healing autos like Cusp Sempiternal being able to provide Void Overshield to allies, having restoration is simply better. Perhaps not by much, but it's far more consistent. Not to mention that typically your Solar Warlocks would be using it, meaning they get easy Ember of Benevolence procs of healing their teammates, which only allows them to be even better at their jobs. The only way that No Hesitation gets power crept is if Bungie releases a new solar healing auto that also comes with Physic and probably better damage or utility perks and a better origin trait. Even then though, Dealer's Choice is pretty good, but at least for now it's safe to say that No Hesitation remains as the best healing auto there is. The last weapon on the list is essentially the previous era's equivalent of Mint Retrograde. That's still really good, just the fact that Mint exists is like, yeah, rocket pulses are so OP, man. Anyway, I am of course talking about the Stasis Rocket Sidearm Tenacious Mastery, purchasable from Lord Saladin whenever the Iron Banner event is active, specifically with the role of Air Trigger and Chill Clip. Before the Edge of Fate, this weapon was glued to my kinetic slot at all times. It sports excellent group ad play capabilities due to the slowing burst from Chill Clip, and Air Trigger now gives it a whopping plus 40 ammo gen stat, putting mine up to a total of 86, and with 200 weapon stats, a special ammo finder and stasis ammo generation on the chest piece, it's nearly impossible to run out of ammo with this thing. Not to mention, it's also excellent for rapidly building your Dark Transcendence energy, far better than Mint Retrograde in fact. Like I said, it's still a really solid rocket sidearm, which is unfortunately overshadowed by the fact that Mint is so busted overpowered, but I'm sure once we get an energy slot rocket pulse that Tinashe will start to see some use again. Lastly, I want to tackle some honorable mentions that are slightly more niche but still strong in their respective areas, starting with the Unvoiced Shotgun from Sundered Doctrine with the role of Redirection Elemental Honing, which when fully stacked up can dish out some serious burst DPS that is albeit let down by how mostly unnecessary and overkill it actually is. Still though, no tiered weapons have this combo, so it's at the very least unique. Next is the Brave version of Falling Guillotine, which given that it's a vortex frame sword that rolls with Eager Edge, it is technically the best frame for shatter or well skating because you gain the most distance from it. And currently there are no new gear, vortex or adaptive frame swords that roll with Eager Edge. Quickly breezing through the last few, the Strand Trace Rifle Unsworn from Sunder Doctrine is still the only kinetic slot trace rifle to get shoot to loot. The VS Chill Inhibitor Stasis Grenade Launcher from Vesper's Host is still one of the best DPS GLs with the role of Envious Arsenal bait and switch. And finally, the Stasis Glaive Rake Angle is the best glaive in the game purely because it has access to Chill Clip that allows for a 2-shot freeze. However, it is not currently farmable in any way. So that about does it for my picks on the old non-tiered weapons that are still very much worth having and grinding for. I hope you learned something new and have perhaps been motivated to go and grind some old content. Obviously, it would be a lot better if all of these weapons and frankly the whole game was brought up into the tier system, but that's what Bungie would call an over-delivery if you get what I'm saying. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the video and are keeping yourself motivated between now and the launch of Renegades. That's it from me. Be sure to like, comment, sub, and hype the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.